Hollywood loves a comeback, but some stars never got one. One scandal, one reckless decision, one moment caught on camera, and entire careers went up in flames. These were once untouchable names with money, fame, and power until everything collapsed. From shocking arrests to public meltdowns, here are the stars who didn't just lose Hollywood, they helped destroy it themselves. Number 1. O.J. Simpson. Before America knew him as the man inside the white Bronco, O.J. Simpson was almost impossibly famous. Heisman Trophy winner, NFL superstar actor, and advertising favorite. He had the kind of smile brands paid millions to borrow. Then June 1994 shattered that image. After his ex-wife Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ronald Goldman were found dead, Simpson suddenly went from beloved celebrity to the center of one of the most explosive criminal cases in American history. What happened next looked less like real life and more like a movie nobody could turn off. On June 17, millions watched live as a white Ford Bronco moved slowly across Los Angeles freeways while police followed behind. News helicopters hovered overhead. Families crowded around televisions. For hours, the entire country watched one of its biggest sports heroes become the subject of a police pursuit in real time. Hollywood could not have scripted a stranger downfall. The courtroom drama became even bigger. Cameras captured every argument as celebrity race policing, media, and justice collided under one roof. On October 3, 1995, Simpson was acquitted of the murder charges, triggering celebration in some places and outrage in others. But in 1997, a civil jury found him liable for Ronald Goldman's wrongful death and battery against Nicole Brown Simpson, and ordered him to pay $33.5 million in damages. The verdict was different, but the damage to his public image was permanent. And somehow, the story still had another act. In 2007, Simpson was arrested after a confrontation involving sports memorabilia in a Las Vegas hotel room. A year later, he was convicted on charges including armed robbery and kidnapping, and sentenced to 33 years in prison, becoming eligible for parole after 9. He walked free in 2017, but the superstar America once knew was long gone. O.J. Simpson did not simply fall from fame. He became a permanent symbol of how quickly celebrity can turn into spectacle and how one life can dominate a nation for all the wrong reasons. Number 2. R. Kelly. For years, R. Kelly seemed almost too big to fall. He dominated R&B, collected Grammys, packed arenas, and created songs that became permanent fixtures of American pop culture. Fame gave him money access and something even more dangerous, the illusion that consequences might never arrive. Allegations followed him for years, yet the records kept selling and the applause kept coming. Then the music industry's protective walls finally began to crack. What had once lived in rumors and tabloid headlines moved into federal courtrooms. In September 2021, a New York jury convicted Kelly on racketeering and Mann Act charges after prosecutors presented evidence describing a long-running system used to recruit, control, and exploit women and girls. The superstar image collapsed almost overnight. In June 2022, the man who once stood beneath stadium lights heard a very different sound, a judge sentencing him to 30 years in federal prison. Chicago brought another blow. In September 2022, Kelly was convicted on 3 counts of producing child pornography and 3 counts of enticing minors into sexual activity. 5 months later, he received a 20-year federal sentence with all but 1 year ordered to run at the same time as his New York sentence. Suddenly, the performer who once commanded crowds had become the subject of courtroom sketches, prison headlines, and sentencing statements instead of concert reviews. His voice helped build an empire, but fame could not keep that empire standing forever. Record labels distanced themselves, radio play collapsed, and a catalog once associated with celebration became inseparable from the crimes that brought him down. R. Kelly did not simply disappear from the spotlight. The spotlight followed him all the way into court, exposing just how long enormous talent and enormous fame can delay a reckoning without ever preventing it. Number 3. Harvey Weinstein. For decades, Harvey Weinstein did not merely work in Hollywood, he seemed to own a piece of it. His companies helped turn films into Oscar winners, actors into stars, and award seasons into personal playgrounds. A phone call from Weinstein could open doors most people spent years knocking on. He walked red carpets beside Hollywood royalty, collected trophies, and built the image of an untouchable kingmaker. Then, almost overnight, the throne caught fire. In 2017, investigative reports brought years of allegations about sexual misconduct and abuse of power into public view. More women came forward, former allies disappeared, and studios that once welcomed him suddenly wanted as much distance as possible. The scandal became one of the driving forces behind the global #MeToo movement. Weinstein was fired from his own company, expelled from the Academy, and transformed from one of Hollywood's most powerful insiders into a symbol of everything the industry had been accused of protecting. The legal story became complicated. Weinstein was convicted in New York in 2020, but that conviction was overturned in 2024, and a new trial was ordered. In the 2025 retrial, a jury convicted him on one criminal sexual act charge, acquitted him on another, and could not reach a verdict on a separate charge. By June 2026, prosecutors dropped that unresolved charge after the accuser said she could not endure another trial. In California, his 2022 conviction remained in place, although an appeals court ordered that he be resentenced. That is what makes Weinstein's downfall so cinematic. The man who once helped decide who stood under the Oscar spotlight eventually became the subject of courtroom cameras instead. His movies still exist, but the aura of power his name is gone. Harvey Weinstein spent years building an empire around influence and fear only to discover the one thing even Hollywood connections could not permanently control: what happens when the people who stayed silent finally start speaking. Number 4. Michael Richards. For nearly a decade, Michael Richards had one of the safest places in comedy. As Kramer on Seinfeld, he turned wild entrances, nervous energy, and impossible physical timing into television history. The show ended in 1998, but reruns kept his face everywhere. He had already become the kind of star who could live comfortably on one legendary character. Then came one night in 2006 that audiences would remember for a very different reason. During a stand-up performance at the Laugh Factory in West Hollywood, Richards was heckled from the audience. Instead of brushing it off, he lost his temper and launched into an offensive rant filled with racist language. Someone in the room recorded it. That detail changed everything. The footage reached the internet, spread across television news, and suddenly Kramer was no longer the funny man bursting through Jerry's apartment door. Richards himself had become the punchline, and nobody was laughing. Only days later, he appeared by satellite on Late Show with David Letterman, while Jerry Seinfeld sat beside Letterman in the studio. Richards apologized, admitting that he had taken the heckling badly and gone into a rage. He looked shaken, but the damage had already escaped the comedy club. In the early age of viral video, There was no putting the moment back in the room where it happened. One ugly performance had become permanently searchable. Richards largely withdrew from stand-up afterward, though he did make occasional television appearances in later years. The strange part is that Kramer never disappeared. Seinfeld continued playing around the world, while the actor behind one of its most beloved characters carried the weight of that night. Michael Richards spent years building a reputation on perfect comic timing, only to learn that sometimes the worst moment of your career needs just a few minutes and one camera. Number 5. Amanda Bynes. Amanda Bynes was supposed to be the child star who beat the curse. She was funny without trying, fearless on camera, and by her teens practically owned Nickelodeon. All that led to The Amanda Show then came What a Girl Wants, She's the Man, Hairspray, and Easy A. Hollywood saw a future comedy queen. But while audiences were still laughing, Bynes was quietly reaching a point where she no longer wanted to look at herself on a movie screen. In 2010, she abruptly announced on Twitter that she was retiring from acting. Years later, Bynes admitted the decision came during a period when her drug use had intensified, and her perception of herself had become deeply distorted. Then the headlines got louder. In 2012, she was arrested on suspicion of DUI after her BMW clipped a sheriff's patrol car. More driving-related trouble followed, along with bizarre social media posts and increasingly public concern about what was happening behind the scenes. By 2013, her career had essentially disappeared, and a conservatorship was established, placing major personal decisions under her mother's control. Bynes later spoke with surprising honesty about abusing Adderall and experimenting with other substances, saying she deeply regretted many of the things she posted online. The strangest part was how quickly America's goofy Nickelodeon sweetheart had become tabloid entertainment. The cameras kept rolling, but the comedy was gone. Yet her story did not end at rock bottom. Bynes studied fashion, graduated from FIDM, and in March 2022, a judge ended the conservatorship after nearly 9 years, ruling that it was no longer necessary. Her acting comeback never arrived in the way fans once imagined, but perhaps surviving the machinery of childhood fame was the bigger comeback. Amanda Bynes did not simply vanish from Hollywood. She became a reminder that sometimes the most dangerous role a young star can play is being famous before they have learned how to survive it. Number 6. Wesley Snipes. Before Marvel became a billion-dollar machine, Wesley Snipes was already proving a comic book hero could dominate the screen. Blade turned him into one of the coolest action stars of the late 1990s, mixing martial arts, attitude, and pure movie star swagger. Add hits like New Jack City, White Men Can't Jump, and Demolition Man, and Snipes looked almost bulletproof. Hollywood had found its action king. Then the real battle began somewhere no stunt double could save him. In 2008, a federal jury convicted Snipes on 3 misdemeanor counts of willfully failing to file federal income tax returns. He was acquitted of more serious felony charges, but the victory was hardly worth celebrating. That April, a judge sentenced him to 3 years in federal prison. Snipes appealed and remained free for a time, but after losing those efforts, he reported to prison in December 2010. Blade had spent years defeating monsters on screen. Now his biggest enemy was the tax code. The timing could not have been worse. While Snipes was away, Hollywood changed at breathtaking speed. Superhero movies exploded, Marvel built an empire, and the genre Blade had helped legitimize became the hottest business in town. Snipes was released in 2013, but 3 missing years in Hollywood can feel like 30. The industry had new faces, new franchises, and very little patience for yesterday's superstar. Snipes refused to disappear. The Expendables 3 put him back in action. Later projects reminded audiences of his charisma, and years afterward, he even returned as Blade for a surprise appearance in Deadpool and Wolverine. It was a comeback with a wicked sense of irony. Wesley Snipes once helped open the door for the superhero age, lost precious years, while that world exploded without him, then walked back through the same door everyone thought had closed for good. Number 7. Mickey Rourke. In the 1980s, Mickey Rourke looked like Hollywood had designed him in a laboratory for trouble. Films like 9½ Weeks, Angel Heart, and Barfly turned him into a magnetic leading man with the face attitude and dangerous charm directors could not manufacture. Critics saw serious talent. Audiences saw a movie star. But while Hollywood was trying to decide how big Rourke could become, Rourke was already getting tired of Hollywood. In 1991, he did something almost unthinkable for an actor near the height of his fame. He stepped away from movies and returned to boxing. Over the next several years, Rourke fought professionally and finished undefeated with 6 wins and 2 draws. The ring gave him something acting no longer did, but it also took a physical toll. Injuries damaged his face, and surgeries afterward dramatically changed the appearance that had once helped make him a screen idol. When he returned to acting, Hollywood had changed, and so had Mickey. For years, the glamorous roles were gone. Smaller parts replaced leading man offers, while stories about his difficult reputation followed him through the industry. Then 2005 brought Sin City, where his battered intensity suddenly became an advantage. 3 years later came The Wrestler, and the resemblance between Rourke and his exhausted fictional fighter felt almost painfully perfect. Critics celebrated him, awards followed, and an Oscar nomination completed one of Hollywood's most improbable comebacks. Mickey Rourke walked away from Hollywood to become a fighter, only to return years later and revive his career by playing one. The face had changed, the swagger had scars, but the talent was still sitting underneath it all. He had spent years being treated like yesterday's news, then reminded everyone why they had watched him in the first place. Sometimes Hollywood gives you a second act. Rourke practically had to fight his way into his. Number 8. Mischa Barton. At just 17, Mischa Barton became the face of one of television's hottest shows. As Marissa Cooper on The Oath, she had everything. Hollywood loves beauty mystery designer clothes, magazine covers, and paparazzi waiting outside every door. By the mid-2000s, Barton was not simply a TV actress. She was a full-blown teen icon. But fame arrived so quickly that almost nobody asked whether she was ready for what came with it. Barton left the OC in 2006 later, saying she wanted to pursue films and that her experience behind the scenes had become difficult. Then the glossy image started cracking in public. In December 2007, police stopped her in West Hollywood after officers said her SUV was drifting between lanes. She was arrested on suspicion of DUI and later pleaded no contest to DUI and driving without a valid license. Suddenly, the red carpet favorite was making headlines for very different reasons. The pressure kept building. In 2009, Barton was hospitalized during what she later described as a full breakdown, after years of relentless work scrutiny and stress. Paparazzi documented nearly every change in her appearance, while tabloids turned personal struggles into entertainment. The girl Hollywood once sold as effortlessly glamorous was discovering just how expensive that image could become. She never completely disappeared. Barton continued acting, appeared in independent projects and reality television, and later spoke more openly about what those years had done to her. Mischa Barton's career was not destroyed by one spectacular explosion. It slowly slipped away under the weight of fame, bad decisions, pressure, and an industry already searching for its next young obsession. Comment 1, if you'd still watch these stars after everything that happened, or 2, if one scandal is enough to ruin the magic forever. Number 9. Tom Sizemore. In the 1990s, Tom Sizemore had the kind of face Hollywood used when a movie needed danger to feel real: heat, Saving Private Ryan, Natural-Born Killers, Black Hawk Down. He could stand beside Robert De Niro, Tom Hanks, or Val Kilmer and still pull your eyes toward him. Directors loved the intensity because Sizemore never seemed to be pretending. Unfortunately, the chaos that made him magnetic on screen was beginning to follow him home. By the early 2000s, his personal life was generating more headlines than his performances. Drug addiction, repeated court appearances, and a 2003 conviction shown on several misdemeanor charges involving former girlfriend Heidi Fleiss badly damaged his reputation. Probation brought another problem. Sizemore repeatedly failed drug tests, cycled through treatment programs, and returned to court again and again. At one hearing in 2005, he openly begged the judge for another chance, telling the court he could not imagine his future without acting. Hollywood gave him more chances than most people ever receive. He went through rehab, appeared on Celebrity Rehab with Dr. Drew, wrote about his addiction, and kept landing smaller film and television roles. But the prestigious projects that once surrounded him became harder to find. The problem was never whether Tom Sizemore could act. Everyone already knew he could. The question became whether a production could trust everything that came with hiring him. Sizemore continued working almost until the end of his life, but the movie star trajectory of the 1990s never fully returned. When he died in 2023 at 61, following a brain aneurysm, tributes remembered both the extraordinary performances and the battles that repeatedly pulled his career off course. Tom Sizemore had enough talent to steal scenes from Hollywood legends. What he could never completely outrun was the turmoil waiting when the cameras stopped. Number 10. Corey Feldman. Corey Feldman did not grow up around Hollywood. He grew up inside it. Before he was old enough to understand fame, he was already working, and by the 1980s, his face was everywhere. Gremlins, The Goonies, Stand By Me, The Lost Boys. Alongside Corey Haim, he became half of one of the decade's most recognizable teen duos. For a while, Feldman looked like the kid who had won the Hollywood lottery. Years later, he would describe that childhood very differently. As adolescence arrived, the clean movie poster image began to unravel. Feldman has spoken openly about drug and alcohol problems beginning when he was young, while his acting career lost the momentum it once had. The blockbuster roles became less frequent, and the former child idol increasingly appeared in stories about addiction, rehabilitation, and the darker side of growing up famous. Hollywood had spent years selling audiences the fun version of Corey Feldman. The adult version was far harder to package. Feldman never completely disappeared. He reunited with Haim for the reality series The Two Coreys, released music, appeared on television, and continued taking smaller acting roles. Some of his live performances became viral for reasons that were not always flattering, but Feldman kept showing up. If Hollywood had stopped treating him like an A-list movie star, he seemed determined to build his own stage anyway. In his 2013 memoir, Choreography, and numerous interviews, Feldman described childhood abuse and argued that young performers could be dangerously vulnerable inside the entertainment industry. Whether audiences saw him as eccentric, tragic, brave, or all three at once, he refused to quietly become an 80s footnote. Corey Feldman's career did not end with one spectacular scandal. It became something stranger, a decades-long fight to survive the fame that arrived before he was old enough to choose it. Number 11. Paul Rubens. For millions of kids, Paul Rubens was not Paul Rubens at all. He was Pee Wee Herman, the bow-tied, squeaky-voiced man-child who turned weirdness into an empire. Pee Wee's Big Adventure became a cult hit, while Pee Wee's Playhouse won Emmys and made Saturday mornings feel completely insane in the best possible way. Toys, television, movies, merchandise. Rubens had created a character so famous that the man behind him almost disappeared. Then July 1991 changed everything. Rubens was arrested at an adult movie theater in Sarasota, Florida on an indecent exposure charge. He later pleaded no contest as part of an agreement that avoided a trial. The media reaction was immediate. CBS pulled scheduled Pee Wee's Playhouse reruns. Disney removed a Pee Wee video from its Florida attraction, and suddenly one of America's most child-friendly characters was trapped inside an adult scandal. But Rubens refused to let one headline write the ending. He stepped away from Pee Wee for years and quietly returned through character roles in films and television. Eventually, even the bow tie came back. A Broadway production revived Pee Wee for a new generation, and Netflix released Pee Wee's Big Holiday in 2016. The character Hollywood once treated like damaged goods somehow survived long enough to become nostalgic, beloved, and strange all over again. When Rubens died in 2023 at 70, after privately facing cancer for years, the conversation sounded very different from the scandal that once dominated his name. Tributes focused on his originality, comedy, and the bizarre little universe he had created. Paul Rubens lost years of momentum after one infamous night, but Pee Wee Herman proved surprisingly difficult to erase. Hollywood tried to close the curtain, and somehow that red bow tie kept finding its way back onto the stage. Number 12. Brendan Fraser. At the turn of the millennium, Brendan Fraser looked unstoppable. George of the Jungle made him a comedy favorite, while The Mummy turned him into a global action star. He could swing from slapstick to adventure without losing the audience, and Hollywood seemed happy to keep throwing him into bigger, more physical roles. But behind the easy smile, his body was paying for nearly every stunt. Years of demanding shoots left Fraser dealing with serious injuries and multiple surgeries. He later said that by the time he was making the third Mummy film, he was basically being held together by tape and ice packs. At the same time, his career slowed, and his personal life became increasingly difficult. In 2018, Fraser also publicly alleged that former Hollywood Foreign Press Association president Philip Burke had groped him in 2003, an experience Fraser said deeply affected him. Burke denied the allegation. For a while, Hollywood seemed to move on without him. Fraser took smaller roles while audiences wondered where one of the biggest stars of the early 2000s had gone. Then something unexpected happened. Fans began celebrating him again. Television roles brought him back into view, and The Whale gave him the kind of dramatic showcase nobody could ignore. Suddenly, the actor people thought Hollywood had forgotten was standing at the center of awards season. In March 2023, Fraser won the Academy Award for Best Actor for The Whale. His story is different from most names on this list, because there was no single reckless night that destroyed everything. Brendan Fraser was worn down by injuries, personal setbacks, and an industry that kept moving. Then years later, Hollywood finally turned around and realized the man it had left behind still had one of the best performances of his career waiting. Number 13. Terrence Howard. Terrence Howard entered the 2000s like Hollywood had finally found its next dangerous leading man. Hustle and Flow earned him an Oscar nomination. Crash became a major hit, and in 2008 he landed James Rhodey Rhodes in Iron Man, standing beside Robert Downey Jr. at the birth of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Howard seemed perfectly positioned for years of blockbuster paychecks. Then before Iron Man 2 even arrived, he was gone. Don Cheadle replaced him as Rhodey, and reports at the time pointed to a salary dispute with Marvel. Howard later claimed the studio dramatically reduced the money offered for the sequel and publicly expressed anger over how the situation unfolded. He even suggested Robert Downey Jr. had failed to support him, although that version has remained Howard's account rather than an established fact. Whatever happened behind closed doors, one thing was undeniable. Marvel exploded into a global empire without him. In 2015, Empire turned him into a television phenomenon as music mogul Luscious Lion. The role revived his career and put him back at the center of pop culture. Yet controversy kept following him, from public disputes and unusual interviews to statements about science and mathematics that often attracted more attention than his acting. Howard could still command a screen, but increasingly the conversation around him happened after the cameras stopped. That is the painful irony of Terrence Howard's career. He stood at the front door of what became the most profitable superhero franchise in Hollywood history, lost the role, then fought his way back with another enormous television success. He never truly disappeared, but the version of his career that Iron Man seemed to promise vanished almost instantly. Sometimes Hollywood does not destroy a star. It simply replaces him and keeps rolling.